Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Ezekiel chapter 8, we have Ezekiel in a vision going to the temple to examine the temple. It was very important for Ezekiel to see the abominations that were taking place there in the temple, since he was the one who the Lord was using to speak words of judgment against the people of Judah. And so he goes to the temple in this vision, and he's able to see at the north of the inner court, north gate of the inner court, the idol of jealousy, perhaps referring to Asherah. But then as he looks to the north of the altar, he sees the idol of jealousy. And then in the entrance of the court, he looks and there's this hole in the wall, and he goes into this hole of the wall and he finds these elders, these leading people, bowing down to all these different creeping things and these different images on the wall, maybe referring to various Egyptian gods that were being worshipped there. And then he goes to the entrance of the gate of the Lord's house and towards the north, and he sees these women sitting and weeping over Tammuz, which was a Babylonian god that they were weeping for, this god of fertility, maybe weeping over the fact that their crops were not being very productive. And then he goes to the inner court of the Lord's house, and at the entrance of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, it says there were 25 men with their backs to the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they're prostrating themselves in the east towards the sun, so worshiping the sun. So all these abominations taking place in various locations within the temple, and Ezekiel is able to see firsthand why it is that the Lord's anger was so aroused. And this great examination ought to cause us pause as we consider the very fact that we too are the temple of God. We are the temple of God as the church, as 1 Corinthians chapter 3 talks about. You are the temple of the living God. But we are also individually a temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And so we can kind of think and ponder over what would it be that Ezekiel would see if he was looking inside of me? What, as he examined our church, perhaps, as the temple, what would he see within the church? But more personally, within our own lives, within our own hearts, within our own minds, what would Ezekiel see if he was to examine us as the temple of God? Would he see there also abominations? Would he see idol worship taking place? Would he see us with our hearts directed towards and adoring the things of this world and evil and sin and rebellion against God? What would Ezekiel see if he was to examine me? We could ask ourselves. It ought to be that we, as the temple of God, would live up to the holiness that is imparted to us as the temple. You know, as the temple back then was a very holy place. It was a place in which the very presence of God resided. And it was a place that they should have considered holy and not brought all these abominations into it and caused all this worship to take place of foreign gods and gods that were opposed to the living God. And the same thing is true with us. We are holy because the very presence of God is with us. And therefore, we should not allow our hearts to be drawn away into the things of the world, into worldliness and evil desires and rebellious acts against God and evil intentions. We should have a heart pure and holy and righteous before Him. And we should be inviting God in to help us to achieve that level of righteousness that He deserves, as He has indwelt us and called us His very temple. So let's let our reading today cause us to become sober and to really think within and to consider, what is it that's going on within my heart? What if my heart, my mind, my body was examined by Ezekiel, or to make it even more heavier, by the Lord Himself, which we know the Lord sees the inner recesses of our hearts. He dwells in the inner chambers of our heart, and He knows exactly what's going on within. And so it's up to us to turn back to the Lord, give him our whole heart once again, to open up our very spirit to him so that he can come in and bring in his holiness, his righteousness, his goodness, and he can purify the temple once again so that it can be a holy place before him, so that he can dwell and be manifested in this world. So these are some things we can reflect on as we read Ezekiel chapter 8. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.